The message came from nowhere, crackling through the vast communication networks that connected thousands of worlds across the galaxy. It was weak, primitive, transmitted on radio waves that most civilized species had abandoned centuries ago. The signal originated from a small yellow star in an unremarkable corner of space, from the third planet in a system the galactic charts labeled simply as Sol 3. Ambassador Zexthul stood before the massive viewing screen in the Confederation Council chamber, his 6 eyes studying the translated text that scrolled past in flowing script. Around him, representatives from dozens of species murmured among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and telepathic static. To the Galactic Confederation, the message began in what the translation computers had identified as the dominant language of the sender species. We are the people of Earth, representing the unified governments of humanity. We have recently achieved interstellar communication capabilities and wish to establish peaceful, diplomatic relations with your organization. We come in friendship, seeking knowledge and offering the same in return. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Several of the smaller species chittered openly, while the massive hegemon delegates simply rumbled with what passed for laughter among their kind. Zexthul himself felt his mandibles twitch in what his species considered a smile. Peaceful diplomatic relations, repeated Counselor Vrakath, her crystalline form chiming with each word. How quaint! Another primitive species believes they can simply ask to join the Confederation. Zexthul gestured for silence with one of his 4 arms. The message continued, and he wanted to hear all of it. The humans, as they called themselves, went on to describe their world, their recently unified government, and their desire to contribute to what they termed the greater galactic community. They offered gifts of mathematical knowledge, artistic works, and scientific discoveries. They even included coordinates for their home world and invited a diplomatic mission to visit them. Mathematical knowledge, scoffed Admiral Kesrak, his scales shifting to display patterns of contempt. From a species that has not even achieved faster-than-light travel, what could they possibly know that we do not? The analysis reports appeared on Zexthul's personal display. Sol 3, the planet these humans called Earth, was a single world harboring approximately 8 billion individuals of their species. They had achieved atomic energy and basic spaceflight, putting them at classification level 7th on the Confederation development scale. Most level 7 species were either ignored entirely or absorbed as labor sources after minimal resistance. Their energy output suggests they have discovered nuclear fusion, reported the chief science advisor, a floating jellyfish-like being, whose translator rendered its bioelectric speech into standard Confederation. However, their largest vessels appear to be barely capable of reaching their own planetary satellites. No evidence of energy shields, plasma weapons, or quantum manipulation. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Zexthul examined the tactical assessment. No orbital defenses, no evidence of military space capability beyond crude chemical rockets. Their most powerful weapons were primitive nuclear devices that could barely crack the armor of a Confederation shuttle. They request an exchange of ambassadors, Zexthul announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. They offer to receive our delegation with what they call full diplomatic honors and hope to establish trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. The last phrase sent several species into renewed fits of amusement. Mutual defense pacts with a single world species that could not even protect their own orbital space. High Counselor Yethnan, the ancient leader of the Confederation, raised one of her many tentacles for attention. Her species had been among the first to achieve interstellar travel, and her personal age was measured in millennia. When she spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. This request amuses the Council, she said, her words carrying the weight of absolute authority. However, the Confederation has always maintained that even the most primitive species deserve consideration. We shall send a diplomatic mission to this Earth. She paused, and Zex Thul could see the calculation in her ancient eyes. Of course, we must also assess their potential value to the Confederation. Their population numbers suggest they could provide adequate labor for our mining operations in the outer systems. Their home world may contain resources worthy of exploitation. The decision was unanimous, as Zex Thul had expected. The Confederation would dispatch a diplomatic vessel to Sol 3, but not for the reasons the humans hoped. They would assess the species for potential integration as a client state, or, more likely, as a protectorate whose resources and population could be efficiently managed. Ambassador Zex Thul, High Counselor Yethnon continued, you will lead this mission. Take the Ascendant Glory and a suitable diplomatic party. Inform these humans of the Confederation's generous offer of protection and guidance. If they prove cooperative, we may allow them to retain some level of self-governance. If not, she did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber understood the fate of species that refused Confederation generosity. As the council session ended and the various species began filing out of the chamber, Zex Thul reviewed the mission parameters on his personal communicator. The Ascendant Glory was a mid-sized vessel, well-armed but designed for diplomatic functions. Its crew of 300 included representatives from a dozen different Confederation species, each selected for their expertise in dealing with primitive civilizations. The ship's captain, a veteran named Korthan from the militaristic Kralex species, appeared on his display screen. Ambassador, we can depart within 6 standard cycles. The journey to Sol 3 will take approximately 20 days at standard cruise speed. Excellent, Zex Thul replied. Ensure our gift storage bays are properly stocked. We will want to impress these humans with demonstrations of our technological superiority. He closed the communication and turned back to the viewing screen, which now displayed a tactical map of the Sol system. Such a small, insignificant star, harboring a species that believed it could simply request membership in an organization that controlled thousands of worlds and countless trillions of beings. The humans' message had included samples of their art and music, which the Cultural Analysis Department had reviewed. Primitive but showing some creativity, the report concluded. Their mathematics were elementary by Confederation standards, though they had managed to discover some basic principles of physics and chemistry. Their literature spoke of concepts like honor, freedom, and self-determination, concepts that would need to be properly managed once they became a Confederation protectorate. Zex Thul made his way through the corridors of the council station toward his private quarters. Tomorrow he would begin preparations for what would likely be a very brief diplomatic mission. The humans would be given the standard choice: accept Confederation protection and guidance, or face the consequences of their refusal. In his centuries of diplomatic service, he had never encountered a level 7 species foolish enough to choose the latter option. The message from Earth continued to repeat on a loop, broadcasting their naive hope for peaceful contact into the void. Zex Thul almost felt sorry for them. They seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the possibility of joining what they called the galactic community. They had no idea that the galactic community was not a democracy of equals, but a carefully managed hierarchy where each species knew its place. Soon enough, these humans would learn their place as well. The Ascendant Glory dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, its sensors immediately beginning their sweep of the primitive star system. Ambassador Zex Thul stood on the bridge, watching as the tactical displays, populated with information about the 9 planets orbiting the small yellow star. Scans confirm the intelligence reports, announced Science Officer Technal, her insectoid form hunched over her console. The 3rd planet shows extensive signs of industrial civilization. Population density appears concentrated in large urban centers. No orbital installations detected beyond primitive communication satellites and a small space station. Captain Korthan examined the tactical readouts with professional interest. Their largest spacecraft appear to be chemical fuel vessels barely capable of reaching their moon. No energy weapons detected, no shield generators. Their most advanced military installations appear to be ground-based missile sites equipped with nuclear warheads. Zexthul nodded approvingly. Everything was exactly as the preliminary reports had indicated. These humans possessed technology that the Confederation had abandoned thousands of years ago. It would be like negotiating with Stone Age primitives. Open. A communication channel, he ordered. Let us announce our arrival. The response came within minutes, transmitted on the same primitive radio frequencies the humans had used for their original message. The voice spoke in their dominant language, which the ship's translators rendered into perfect Confederation. Standard. Unknown vessel. This is Earth Traffic Control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. This is Ambassador Zexthul of the Galactic Confederation, responding to your invitation for diplomatic contact. We request permission to establish orbit around your world for formal negotiations. The silence stretched for several minutes. Zexthul could imagine the panic and excitement such a message would cause among the humans. First contact with an alien civilization would be the most significant event in their species' history. When the response came, it was in a different voice, older and more formal. Ambassador Zexthul, this is Secretary General Chen Wei of the United Earth Government. On behalf of all humanity, I welcome you to our solar system. We have prepared a reception for your delegation and invite you to meet with our representatives. We are transmitting coordinates for a suitable orbital position. Graciously accepted, Zexthul replied, though his tone carried subtle condescension that he doubted the primitives would detect. 3 hours later, a small human shuttle approached the Ascendant Glory. The vessel was laughably crude, using chemical, rockets for propulsion, and metal plating for protection. Zexthul watched from the observation deck as it docked with their ship, marveling at how the humans had managed to achieve even this level of technology. The airlock opened, and the human delegation entered. Zexthul had seen images of the species in the preliminary files, but seeing them in person was still amusing. They were bipedal mammals, covered in primitive clothing that served both protective and decorative functions. Their leader, Secretary General Chen Wei, was a small female with graying hair and intelligent eyes. Ambassador Zexthul, she said, bowing slightly in what was apparently a human gesture of respect. Thank you for accepting our invitation. This is truly a historic moment for our species. Indeed, Zexthul replied, towering over the human delegation with his 2-meter height and 4 arms. The Confederation is always pleased to make contact with developing civilizations. The word developing was carefully chosen. In Confederation terminology, it was one step above primitive and several steps below civilized. The humans had brought gifts, as their original message had promised. They presented mathematical proofs, samples of their art and literature, recordings of their music, and examples of their scientific achievements. Secretary General Chen spoke passionately about human culture, their diversity of languages and customs, their history of overcoming conflicts to achieve unity. We have recently established a unified planetary government, she explained, gesturing to holographic displays the humans had somehow managed to create despite their technological limitations. For the first time in our history, all nations of Earth speak with one voice. We believe this positions us to be productive members of the galactic community. The alien delegation exchanged glances that the humans likely could not interpret. Cultural Officer Vexith, whose species communicated primarily through color changes in their skin, was practically glowing with amusement. The humans thought their planetary unification was an achievement worthy of note, when most Confederation species had unified their homeworlds before achieving interstellar travel. Your accomplishments are remarkable, Zexthul said, accepting a small sculpture that apparently represented some aspect of human artistic expression. However, I should explain how the Confederation typically handles integration of new species. He activated his personal holographic projector, showing images of Confederation space. Thousands of star systems appeared in the display, connected by trade routes, and communication networks. The Confederation encompasses over 10,000 inhabited worlds, he began, noting how the human's eyes widened at the scope of galactic civilization. We maintain order and prosperity through a carefully structured system. Each member species contributes according to their abilities and receives protection and guidance according to their needs. Secretary General Chen leaned forward, clearly interested. We're very eager to contribute to such an organization. Earth may be a single world, but we have 8 billion people and extensive industrial capabilities. We've developed some unique technologies that might be of interest to the broader galactic community. Several members of the alien delegation made sounds that their translators rendered as polite coughs, but which were actually poorly suppressed laughter. Your enthusiasm is charming, Zexthul continued. However, given your current technological development level, the Confederation has determined that Earth would best serve as a protectorate world. He expanded the holographic display to show the Confederation's administrative structure. Protectorate. Worlds are placed under direct Confederation management for their own protection. Your population would be relocated to designated residential areas optimized for efficiency and safety. Your industrial capabilities would be integrated into the broader Confederation economy. Your military forces would be disbanded, as protection would be provided by Confederation security forces. The humans exchanged glances that even the aliens could interpret as troubled. I'm not sure I understand, Secretary General Chen said carefully. Are you saying that humanity would not be allowed to govern itself? Self-governance is a privilege earned through demonstrated capability, Zexthul explained patiently. Your species lacks the technological sophistication and cultural development necessary for full membership in the Confederation. Protectorate status would allow you to contribute to galactic civilization while ensuring your world's resources are properly managed. And if we decline this offer? Asked another human delegate, a military officer whose posture had noticeably stiffened. The question surprised Zexthul. In all his centuries of diplomatic service, no primitive species had ever asked that question. The answer was so obvious that it seemed unnecessary to state it. Decline? He repeated. I'm afraid I don't. Understand. The Confederation's protection is not optional for worlds within our sphere of influence. Your system falls clearly within Confederation space. Secretary General Chen stood slowly, her small frame somehow managing to project dignity, despite being surrounded by beings who could easily overpower her. Ambassador Zexthul, she said, her voice carrying a firmness that seemed incongruous with her species' primitive technology. I'm afraid that proposal is unacceptable. We respectfully decline your offer of protectorate status. Humanity will remain a free and independent species. The silence that followed her words was absolute. Every alien in the room stared at the small human female who had just done something that no one in the Confederation had seen before. A primitive species had refused their generous offer of protection and management. Zexthul's mandibles twitched, in what might have been amusement or disbelief. I believe there has been a misunderstanding. Perhaps your translation systems are malfunctioning. The Confederation's offer is not a negotiation. It is an inevitability. Our translation systems are working perfectly, Secretary General Chen replied. And our answer remains the same. We appreciate your visit, but humanity chooses to remain independent. We hope you will respect our decision. For the first time in his diplomatic career, Ambassador Zexthul found himself genuinely speechless. Ambassador Zexthul stared at the small human female for several long moments, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as his mind processed what he had just heard. Around him, the other members of the Confederation delegation seemed equally stunned by the unprecedented response. Secretary General Chen, he said finally, his voice carrying the patience one might use with a confused child. I believe you may not fully comprehend the situation. The Confederation's authority extends across thousands of star systems. No single world has the capability to exist independently within our sphere of influence. "We understand the scope of your organization," Chen replied calmly. "However, we also understand the principle of self-determination. Humanity will not surrender its freedom simply because we are outnumbered." Cultural Officer Vexith's skin shifted through several colors that the translation system identified as expressions of bewilderment and amusement. Military Attaché Krexvol, a heavily armored creature from one of the Confederation's warrior species, leaned forward with what passed for a smile among his kind. "Perhaps," Zexthul said, his tone becoming more formal, "a demonstration would help clarify the realities of your situation." He gestured to Captain Korthan, who nodded and activated his communication device. "Captain to bridge, prepare a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Target the uninhabited landmass designated as coordinates 77 Alpha." Through the observation windows of the diplomatic chamber, the humans could see the Ascendant Glory's main weapons systems coming online. Energy coursed through crystalline focusing arrays that glowed with barely contained power. The ship's plasma. Cannons rotated toward Earth, their targeting systems locking onto a small uninhabited island in the planet's largest ocean. "The island you are about to observe has no human population," Zexthul explained conversationally. "Consider this an educational demonstration of the technology gap between our civilizations." The plasma beam that lanced down from the ship lasted only 3 seconds. When it ended, the island was gone, replaced by a perfectly circular area of glass that reflected the sunlight like a mirror. The energy release had been so intense that it had fused the ocean floor into a crystalline sheet extending several meters below the surface. The human delegates watched in complete silence. Several of them were recording the demonstration with primitive electronic devices, while others simply stared at the display of raw power that had just erased a piece of their world. That island was approximately 2 kilometers in diameter, Zexthul noted helpfully. "Our ship carries 12 such weapons, along with missile systems, particle beam arrays, and defensive shields that could deflect your most powerful nuclear weapons with minimal energy expenditure." He paused, allowing the implications to sink in before continuing. "The Confederation battle fleet contains over 50,000 ships of various classes, many of them significantly more powerful than the Ascendant Glory. I trust this helps put your situation in proper perspective." Secretary General Wu Chen turned away from the observation window, her face pale but her expression unchanged. "A very impressive display of technology, Ambassador. However, it does not change our position. Humanity will not submit to foreign rule, regardless of the technological disparity." The other humans nodded in agreement, their primitive recording devices still documenting the conversation. Zexthul found their unity touching in its futility. "I see," he said, his tone becoming colder. "In that case, I am authorized to inform you that you have 72 standard hours to reconsider your position. During this time, you may use your communication systems to consult with your world's leadership and reach a more reasonable conclusion." "And if our answer remains the same?" asked the military officer who had spoken earlier. "Then the Confederation will be forced to take more direct action to ensure galactic security," Zexthul replied. "I would prefer not to detail what such action might entail." The human delegation was escorted back to their shuttle without further ceremony. As their crewed vessel departed for Earth's surface, Zexthul made his way to the bridge to observe their homeworld's response to the demonstration. "Interesting species," commented Captain Korthan, watching the tactical displays that monitored Earth's communications networks. "Most primitives would have surrendered immediately after witnessing our firepower." "Indeed," Zexthul agreed. "However, their bravery will not protect them from the consequences of their foolishness. Have you detected any signs of military mobilization?" "Some unusual activity," Science Officer Theknal reported. "Increased communications traffic, industrial facilities operating at maximum capacity, and movement of what appear to be civilian vessels. However, nothing that suggests meaningful military preparation." The alien officers spent the next 3 days monitoring Earth's response to their ultimatum. The humans' communication networks buzzed with activity, and their news broadcasts covered the alien contact extensively. Most interesting to the Confederation observers was the apparent unity of the human response. Despite representing hundreds of different political entities, they seemed universally committed to their leadership's decision to refuse protectorate status. Their primitive nationalism appears to extend to their entire species, observed Cultural Officer Vexith. Fascinating, though ultimately irrelevant. On the third day, Zexthul received a message from Confederation High Command. Admiral Kriksta would arrive within 6 hours with a battle squadron to resolve the situation. The Admiral was a veteran of dozens of planetary pacification campaigns and had never failed to bring a resistant world into compliance. As the deadline approached, Earth transmitted a final response. Secretary General Chen's voice came through the communication systems with the same calm determination she had shown during their first meeting. Ambassador Zexthul, humanity's answer remains unchanged. We will not accept protectorate status. We understand the consequences of our decision and are prepared to face them. However, we wish to remind you that peaceful withdrawal from our system remains possible. We bear you no ill will and would still welcome honest diplomatic relations, based on mutual respect. Zexthul found the message almost admirable in its naivety. These humans genuinely believed they could negotiate with the Confederation as equals. They seemed incapable of understanding that their technological inferiority made them subjects rather than potential partners. "Attention, Earth," he broadcast in response. "Your time has expired. Confederation military forces are en route to your system. I strongly advise you to reconsider your position before their arrival. Admiral Kriksta is far less patient than a diplomatic mission." The human response came not from their government, but from what appeared to be their military command. The voice was crisp, professional, and completely unimpressed by the threat. "Ambassador Zexthul, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We acknowledge your warning. However, our position remains unchanged. Any hostile action against Earth will be met with appropriate defensive measures." "Earth Defense Force?" Captain Korthan laughed, his scales shifting to display amusement patterns. "What defense could they possibly mount? Their most advanced vessels can barely reach their own moon." Zexthul was beginning to find the humans' persistence more annoying than amusing. "Admiral Chen, I must inform you that resistance will only result in unnecessary casualties. The Confederation has protocols for dealing with non-compliant civilizations." "We understand your protocols, Ambassador," came the reply. "And we have protocols of our own. You have been warned that departure is still possible. I suggest you take advantage of this opportunity." The transmission ended, leaving the Bridge of the Ascendant Glory in bemused silence. The humans had just threatened them. A primitive single-world species had actually threatened a Confederation diplomatic mission. "Should we inform Admiral Kriksta of their attitude?" asked Captain Korthan. "I think the Admiral will discover it for himself soon enough," Zexthul replied. "In the meantime, maintain standard observation protocols. I want to document everything that happens when the squadron arrives. This will make an interesting case study in primitive psychology." As he spoke, long-range sensors detected the approaching Confederation battle squadron dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. 12 ships, including Admiral Kriksta's flagship, the Inevitable Conquest. More than enough. Firepower to reduce Earth's surface to molten slag if necessary. The humans were about to learn why resistance to the Confederation was not just futile, but literally unthinkable. The Confederation battle squadron emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 12 warships arranged in a combat spread that had been perfected over thousands of military campaigns. At the center of the formation flew the Inevitable Conquest, Admiral Kriksta's flagship, its hull scarred from dozens of planetary pacification operations. Admiral Kriksta stood on his command bridge, surveying the primitive star system through the main viewing screen. His species, the Kralex, had evolved from pack hunters, and his predatory instincts made him particularly effective at suppressing rebellious worlds. His massive frame, covered in chitinous armor plating, moved with surprising grace as he studied. The tactical displays. "Report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never failed to complete a mission. "System scan complete, Admiral," responded his tactical officer. "Single inhabited world, third planet from the star. Population approximately 8 billion. No orbital defenses detected. No fleet formations in system beyond the diplomatic vessel. Ascendant glory. What about their military capabilities? Primitive nuclear weapons, chemical fuel rockets, and basic industrial infrastructure. Their most advanced combat vehicles appear to be atmospheric aircraft using jet propulsion. No energy weapons, no shield technology, no faster-than-light. Capability. Admiral Kriksta's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Another routine operation. His squadron could reduce this world to rubble in a matter of hours if necessary, though he preferred to achieve compliance through overwhelming displays of force rather than actual destruction. Dead populations produced no resources and served no useful purpose. "Open a channel to the diplomatic ship," he ordered. Ambassador Zextul's image appeared on the communication screen, his 4 arms gesturing in greeting. "Admiral Kriksta, welcome to the Sol system. I trust your journey was uneventful." "Report on the situation, Ambassador." "The humans have refused protectorate status and shown remarkable resistance to reasonable negotiation. They claim they will defend themselves against Confederation authority." Admiral Kriksta's laugh was a sound like grinding metal. "Defend themselves? With what? Our scans show no meaningful military capability." "Indeed. Their defiance appears to be based on some primitive concept of honor rather than rational assessment of their situation." "Understood. I will resolve this matter quickly. Has there been any change in their military posture since our arrival?" Zextul consulted his displays. "Some unusual communications activity and movement of civilian vessels. However, nothing that suggests meaningful military preparation. They appear to be evacuating some population centers, which shows they understand the seriousness of their situation even if they refuse to surrender." Admiral Kriksta nodded and closed the communication. He turned to his weapons officer, a veteran of dozens of similar campaigns. "Prepare a demonstration strike. Target their largest military installation. Keep it small. We want to encourage surrender, not genocide." The squadron moved into attack formation, approaching Earth with the deliberate precision of an organization that had conquered thousands of worlds. Their energy signatures blazed across every sensor on the planet below, announcing their presence to anyone with even primitive detection equipment. "Scanning Earth's communication networks," reported the intelligence officer. "Massive surge in their information systems. They're broadcasting news of our arrival across their entire planet." "Let them watch," Admiral Kriksta said. "Fear can be as effective as force in encouraging compliance." He activated the general communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies that the humans used for their primitive radio networks. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Kriksta of the Confederation Navy. Your government has refused the generous offer of protectorate status. You now have one final opportunity to surrender before we demonstrate the futility of resistance." The Bai response came not from the planet's surface, but from somewhere much closer. A transmission so powerful it actually caused feedback in the squadron's communication arrays. Every ship in the formation received the signal simultaneously, broadcast, with impossible precision across multiple frequencies. "Confederation forces, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in sovereign human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Kriksta stared at his communication officer in disbelief. "Source of that transmission?" "Unknown, sir. The signal appears to be coming from everywhere. Multiple transmission points throughout the system. That's impossible. Our scans show no significant installations beyond the planet itself. The tactical officer looked up from his displays, confusion evident even through his alien features. Admiral, we're detecting some kind of anomaly. There are gravitational disturbances throughout the system that weren't present when we arrived. Specify. Mass concentrations that don't correspond to any visible objects. They're small but widespread, as if... He paused, consulting his instruments. Again. Sir, it's as if there are large objects throughout the system that our sensors cannot detect. Admiral Kriksta felt the first stirring of unease. In all his campaigns against primitive worlds, he had never encountered anything like this. Intensify all scans. I want to know what we're dealing with. The response came not from his sensors, but from Admiral Chen's voice, returning with the same impossible clarity. Admiral Kriksta, you seem confused. Allow me to clarify the situation. As she spoke, space around the Confederation squadron began to shimmer. What had appeared to be empty voids started to shift and flow like liquid metal. Stealth fields flickered and died, revealing shapes that had been hidden from their sensors. You came here expecting to find a primitive world defended by chemical rockets and nuclear weapons? Admiral Chen continued, her voice now clearly originating from directly in front of the squadron. You were correct about our technology level when you first detected us. However, you made one critical error in your assessment. The largest stealth field collapsed, revealing something that made Admiral Kriksta's predatory instincts scream warnings. A massive structure materialized directly ahead of his flagship, so large that his tactical computers initially classified it as a small moon. You assumed, Admiral Chen's voice continued from the Leviathan that had appeared before them, that we had no prior experience with visitors from the Confederation. The human ship, if it could be called a ship, was unlike anything in Admiral Kriksta's experience. It was clearly artificial, constructed from metals and composites, but its design followed no known engineering principles. Parts of its hull appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves that suggested biotechnology. Other sections showed the angular efficiency of advanced manufacturing techniques. Tactical analysis, Admiral Kriksta commanded, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his chest. Sir, the object measures approximately 12 kilometers in length. Mass readings are off our scales. Energy output. The tactical officer paused, recalibrating his instruments. Sir, the energy output from that vessel exceeds our entire squadron's power generation by a factor of 50. That's impossible. No single world species could construct such a vessel. Admiral Chen's response carried a note of amusement. Admiral, you're thinking like a species that developed independently. We had help. More stealth fields collapsed throughout the system. Smaller vessels appeared around each of the Confederation ships, sleek fighters that moved with impossible grace through space. Defense platforms materialized near Earth's orbit, their weapon arrays tracking the squadron with mechanical precision. Hidden shipyards became visible near the system's outer planets, clearly in the process of constructing more vessels. 3 years ago, Admiral Chen explained, the first Confederation expedition arrived in our system. An exploration vessel that had suffered navigation failures and was desperately seeking resources. We helped them repair their ship, gave them supplies, and sent them on their way with samples of our art and culture as gifts. Admiral Kriksta's blood went cold. 3 years ago, the exploration ship Wandering Star had been reported lost with all hands. There had been no distress signals, no trace of wreckage. In return for our assistance, Admiral Chen continued, they provided us with detailed information about Confederation technology, military doctrine, and territorial expansion patterns. We learned that your organization does not recognize the sovereignty of single-world species. We learned that you were coming. The human ship, Admiral Kriksta now realized it had to be called a battleship, though it dwarfed anything in the Confederation fleet, began moving toward his squadron. Despite its massive size, it accelerated smoothly, without any visible propulsion system. "We spent 3 years preparing for your arrival," Admiral Chen said. 3 years reverse engineering Confederation technology and adapting it to human manufacturing techniques. 3 years building a defense force capable of protecting our independence. Admiral Kriksta looked at his tactical displays in growing horror. The energy readings from the human vessels were impossible. They had somehow leapfrogged millennia of technological development in 3 years. "You have 60 seconds to begin your withdrawal." Admiral Chen's voice. Admiral Kriksta stared at the impossible vessel hanging in space before his squadron, his predator instincts warring with military training that had never prepared him for a situation like this. The human battleship was so large that his flagship could have fit inside its main gun barrel with room to spare. The gravitational distortions it created were affecting his navigation systems, and the energy readings were beyond anything his instruments could properly measure. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled panic, "we're detecting weapon systems across the entire surface of that vessel. Plasma cannons, particle beam arrays, and, sir, there are weapon types our computers cannot identify." "Classification?" Kriksta demanded, though he already knew the answer would be meaningless. "Unknown, sir. The technology appears to be a hybrid of Confederation systems and something else entirely. Our databases have no reference for these configurations." On the communication screen, Ambassador Zexthal's image flickered with static. The diplomatic vessel was clearly struggling with the electromagnetic interference generated by the human ships. "Admiral, this is impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated a primitive civilization with no space-based military capability." "Your intelligence was 3 years out of date," Admiral Kriksta replied grimly. He opened a channel to Admiral Chen. "Admiral Chen, I am prepared to discuss terms for our withdrawal." "There are no terms to discuss," came the immediate reply. "You will leave our system now, or we will remove you. The choice is yours." Admiral Kriksta looked at his tactical displays, searching for any advantage his squadron might possess. His ships were among the most advanced in the Confederation fleet, veterans of dozens of successful campaigns, but they were facing something that defied all conventional understanding of technological development. "Sir," his intelligence officer called out, "we're receiving detailed scans of our vessels. Every ship in the squadron is being analyzed by their sensor systems." "How detailed?" "Complete structural analysis, weapon system identification, shield frequency mapping." "Sir, they know more about our ships than our own engineers do." The implications were terrifying. If the humans could scan Confederation vessels with such precision, they could also target them with devastating accuracy. Admiral Kriksta realized that his squadron was not just outgunned, they were completely defenseless. "Admiral," Admiral Chen's voice returned, "your vessels are impressive examples of Confederation engineering. The inevitable conquest is particularly well designed. Those plasma cannons could probably crack a small moon given enough time." The casual assessment of his flagship's capabilities sent chills through Admiral Kriksta's scaled hide. The humans were discussing his weapons as if they were toys. "However," Admiral Chen continued, "I should point out that our main gun has an effective range of approximately 6 astronomical units and carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface in a single shot. Your shields would stop it for roughly 3 microseconds. To demonstrate her point, one of the smaller weapon arrays on the human battleship briefly activated. The energy beam lanced past Admiral Kriksta's flagship, missing by several kilometers, but still causing his ship's shields to flare from the peripheral energy discharge. The beam continued into space, striking an asteroid in the system's outer reaches and converting it to superheated plasma in an instant. "That was our point defense system," Admiral Chen noted helpfully. "Designed for destroying incoming missiles and small attack craft." Admiral Krixta's weapons officer looked up from his console, his face pale. "Sir, that single shot carried more energy than our main batteries combined, and they have hundreds of similar weapons across their hull." The Admiral finally understood the true scope of his predicament. The humans had not just built a larger ship, they had fundamentally advanced beyond Confederation technology. Somehow, in 3 years, they had achieved what it had taken his civilization millennia to develop. "How?" he transmitted, his voice carrying genuine bewilderment. "How did you accomplish this in such a short time?" "The same way humanity has always accomplished the impossible," Admiral Chen replied. "We adapted. When we learned about the Confederation's expansion patterns, we realized we had two choices: submit or evolve. We chose evolution." Images appeared on Admiral Krixta's screens, transmitted from the human vessel. They showed massive construction facilities hidden throughout the Sol system, automated shipyards that built components in space, and industrial complexes that had been concealed beneath the surfaces of airless moons. "We had advantages you couldn't have anticipated," Admiral Chen continued. "First, we had complete technical specifications of your technology, provided by your own people. Second, we had something you don't: 8 billion individuals all working toward the same goal. Third, we had motivation you cannot understand: the absolute refusal to surrender our freedom." More images flowed across the communication link. Human workers and automated systems laboring around the clock, converting entire asteroids into raw materials, building the hidden fleet that now surrounded the Confederation squadron. "We built this ship in 72 hours, Admiral Chen revealed. "From the moment your ambassador delivered his ultimatum to the moment you arrived, we were constructing the UES Indomitable. Every industrial facility on Earth and throughout our system worked continuously to complete it in time." Admiral Krixta's mind reeled. Building a ship of this magnitude in 72 hours should have been physically impossible, even with advanced nanotechnology. The coordination required, the resource management, the sheer scale of the operation. "Your species," he said slowly, "is not what our intelligence reports indicated." "No," Admiral Chen agreed. "We're not. You see, Admiral, you made the same mistake that every aggressive civilization makes. You assumed that technological superiority equals invincibility. You forgot that technology is just tools, and tools are only as effective as the minds that wield them." The human battleship began moving again, its massive bulk accelerating with impossible smoothness. As it moved, more ships became visible. Dozens of smaller vessels that had been hidden in its shadow, each one carrying enough firepower to threaten a Confederation cruiser. "You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal," Admiral Chen announced. "I suggest you use them wisely." Admiral Krixta looked around his bridge at officers who had served with him through dozens of successful campaigns. For the first time in his career, he was going to retreat from a single-world species. The humiliation would end his military service, but that was preferable to ending his life. "All ships," he commanded, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Begin withdrawal. To jump coordinates. Maximum acceleration." The Confederation squadron turned away from Earth, their engines straining to reach safe jumping distance as quickly as possible. Behind them, the human fleet maintained formation, but did not pursue. "Admiral Krixta," came Admiral Chen's final transmission. "The Confederation is welcome to return to our system at any time, for trade negotiations, cultural exchange, or peaceful diplomatic relations. We bear you no ill will, and we understand you were following orders." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "However, if you return with hostile intent, you will discover that the Indomitable was only the beginning. We've learned your technology now, Admiral. We've improved upon it, and we've built a fleet that makes this demonstration look modest by comparison." As the Confederation ships reached jump distance and fled into faster-than-light travel, Admiral Kriksta realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. The humans had done more than defend themselves. They had announced that the age of Confederation expansion was over. Behind them, the human fleet settled back into concealment around their homeworld, ready to defend the principle that had driven their impossible achievement, the simple idea that freedom was worth any price and any sacrifice to preserve. The last transmission from Earth followed the retreating squadron into hyperspace, Admiral Chen's voice carrying a message that would soon echo throughout Confederation space. The next time anyone suggests that diplomacy is weakness, remind them that we tried diplomacy first. We prefer it to the alternatives.